welcome back to the next episode of our Healthcast. My name is Lydia Greenhalgh. I'm a senior content writer at AXA Healthcare. Over the last 8 years, AXA Healthcare has been listening and monitoring the experiences of HR leaders and international assignees across the world to see how global mobility is evolving. Today, I'll be joined by Ellen Hughes, Chief People Officer for AXA Health Business, and together we'll talk a little bit about the research. And we'll also hear from Ellen's personal experience of being an assignee, as well as her professional experience of sending people on assignment herself. Hi, Ellen. Thanks for joining us today on the World of Work Healthcast.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ellen Hughes, and I'm the Chief People Officer for AXA's Health Business.
Lovely to have you with us. So, Ellen, do you want to tell me a little bit about your personal experience and your professional experience of international assignments? Give us a little bit of background.
So I've worked for AXA for over 20 years now, and I've had the real privilege to do several international assignments. So the first one I did was moving from London to Paris, where I went for a role at our global headquarters. And then more recently, I did an expat assignment to Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Exactly, which was a fantastic experience.
How long was your time in Chicago? That sounds exciting.
I was in Chicago for 3.5 years.
Oh, wow, okay, that's a long time.
It was.
What would you say was your favourite part about being in Chicago? What was the best part of that assignment?
Chicago is a wonderful city, so it's one of those places where I really felt like I could settle properly. The people are super friendly, super welcoming, very diverse city, lots going on. And of course, I love to travel, so I took the opportunity to travel a lot across the US and the Americas from that base as well, which was a great personal highlight.
Can you tell me sort of why you were sent an international assignment in the first place? Maybe starting with Paris and then also moving on to the other one?
Yeah, of course. And for me, the experiences were a little bit different. So when I went to Paris, it was purely a personal and a lifestyle choice. So I knew I always wanted to have an experience living and working abroad. And obviously, one of the benefits of working for a big global group like AXA is to be able to take that opportunity. So for me, when I went to Paris, it was a personal decision. I applied for a job there and then moved there on a local basis. And then for the US, it was slightly different, where we ended up with a vacancy in our team in the US. And I think my manager saw it as a real win-win in order for me to go to the US to help bridge a little bit the gap between our European teams and the US teams, help build a bit more of a bridge and a connection point there. And also for me personally, it was a great development opportunity because obviously HR in the US is very different to HR in Europe. So that was a really nice way of broadening my experience, adapting my style and my flexibility by working there for a few years as well.
In terms of sort of your motivations, your personal motivations as well for going on assignment, I'm assuming they're probably different the first time to the second time. Can you tell me a little bit about that as well? I think people's motivations for going on international assignment can cross so many different things. They're so broad, but it'd be lovely to hear what yours were.
I see a lot as well when I'm supporting other assignees that I think at the end of the day, the key motivation for people going on international assignment is to be able to broaden experience and to develop a whole new skill set, which is what you get when you work internationally. So the skills in terms of navigating different cultures, being able to adapt, to flex style are super important when you're working in an international business. And there's no better way to do that than to go and immerse yourself in a different culture and really learn it, connect with people on a much deeper level, and experience that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also we've learned from our research as well that we've done through the world of work that cultural adaptation is really key to successful assignments, actually. So what you're talking about there in terms of immersion and making sure that you feel integrated, obviously, is a really key part of making sure they're a success. So I suppose from on the flip side of that, obviously, if we're sending people on assignment, how do you think sort of employee motivations have evolved when it comes to taking on these sort of globally mobile roles? What do you think is influencing people's decision to work abroad? I mean, maybe it's changed as well over the last 5-10 years that you've experienced, but what do you think?
I think people increasingly see where we live in a global connected world. It is a real advantage to somebody's career in order to have that ability to navigate different cultures, to have experience of working internationally.
Yeah.
And whilst after the COVID boom, we've all got a lot more access now with technology to connect directly, which is very helpful, but it is still a very different experience where you can go and live your life in a different country, work, and really kind of get that deep immersion into a different culture there that's highly valuable.
Yeah, you're right. It's very different to sort of talking to your peers who might be working globally on Teams than actually obviously going out and experiencing that yourself. So yeah, although we have these ways of connecting now, there's nothing can beat being in person, can it really, in that respect? So yeah,
exactly. And I think it can be a real career accelerator, because obviously for some people, if they want to move into roles where they could have more ability to manage global teams, having that experience, I think, is super helpful to be able to do that. And increasingly, I think organisations will look for people to manage global functions by having had that experience themselves.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's kind of maybe an element of that talent recruitment, I suppose, as well, isn't it? And seeking those people out, because you can really makes you stand out from everybody else in that respect if you've got additional experience working abroad. Yeah. So in terms of sort of how global mobility is evolving, obviously we've noticed quite a lot from our research that shorter assignments are gaining in popularity. Digital nomadism especially, HR decision makers are saying, is going to rise quite dramatically in the next 5 years. How do you think that might change the global mobility landscape a little bit? How do you think that might shift things in terms of maybe what people need when they move abroad for work?
Yeah, so I think the shorter assignments are very interesting, because obviously with an assignment, it's not just a work and career decision for people. There's always a personal decision there as well. And I think sometimes the shorter assignments are influenced by people needing that to fit with their wider lifestyle choices as well. So perhaps people can't commit to go and live for years in a different country, but months could be very achievable and still get some real benefit from that. So obviously for HR teams to be able to adapt and provide the support, it will look very different if you're supporting shorter assignments to much longer term ones. So I think really having mobility policies that can flex to the needs of what you need your expats to be doing, as well as what those employees will need in terms of support, will be really important.
Having flexible benefit packages and personalised benefit packages, even if that's possible, it is actually something we've seen from the research is becoming increasingly important. Yeah, which I think brings me nicely on to the next part I'm going to ask you about, which is sort of when you went on assignment yourself, what benefits did you have and what did you find were the most important to you? I think they're very different for everyone, aren't they? But
obviously working for AXA, we're very lucky to have a very comprehensive support package for international mobility, which is put together by a very expert team. So I had a whole package that I felt very secure with, right from relocation services, helping me find an apartment, accommodation allowance, health insurance, assistance programs, tax support to do your tax returns. Yeah. So really, I felt like everything end to end was covered in terms of benefits, which was great. But the other piece that I would highlight that I think was super important that we also see in the research is it's not just the benefits, but really some of the informal support that really makes the big difference on assignees. So, for example, when I went to the US, the things that really made a difference were the very simple things like having my new colleagues help me with, which all the different neighborhoods I might want to consider living in. Yes. Giving me all the top tips of places to visit, helping me connect into social networks, introducing me to people in the city, welcoming me into their family, their friends. And actually that support was really priceless, because that was what helped me to really settle in, build a real personal life, which is so important then before the work topic can really start.
I suppose again then, so coming back to sort of your professional experience of assignments, the research is obviously showing us that from a benefits perspective, local health insurance is becoming increasingly popular, but international health insurance, as we know, continues to rank really highly for HR decision makers and for assignees. Why do you think having that reassurance of international private health insurance is still so important when people are abroad? I mean, considering what we've already spoken about in terms of shorter assignments, digital nomadism, why do you think that offers that support?
I think the real benefit of having international health insurance is really that it has got that additional level of security, that no matter where you are, in which country you are, you're covered. Yes. And obviously, particularly with these populations, they are likely to be travelling more mobile. And obviously, as an employer, when you're asking your employees to go and work in a different country, there's a real duty of care to make sure that that person has everything that they need to stay well, healthy and safe and secure. And that's really the benefit of the international health insurance.
And from your experience of sending people on assignment, then I suppose you've sort of already touched on it a little bit, but how essential is continuous and transparent communication in managing international mobility programs? I mean, is there one thing that you would say is really important, like regular check-ins, for example, maybe, or like, is there anything you'd pull out?
Exactly. I think it's exactly that. I think it's for the home HR and the home manager to keep in close connection with the individual, because whilst they might be away in a different country doing a different job, at the end of the day, they're still part of the broader organisation. So I think it's important to keep them connected, keep them understanding all the developments, what's going on, also to help prepare the return home, which is always easier when you know that you've got your manager, your HR there to support you and help you find the right next step afterwards. So I think formalising those check-ins, making sure that there's regular career discussions as you're going through assignment with the person is the most critical part.
Yeah, managing expectations, I suppose, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that surprised you when you went on international assignment in terms of maybe not necessarily just about communication, but is there anything that you were pleasantly surprised by, or you thought was you weren't expecting?
I would say real surprise, because I felt very well prepared, and I felt like the expectation I had was what I got. If anything, it would be more feeling that the experience I got was probably even more than I was expecting. Because again, I think when you really have the opportunity to be part of a new culture, to build a life in a different city, that's so enriching on a personal level, really helps with personal growth, not just work-life growth. And actually, it was something I felt really proud of, because again, it is, I think, a big achievement to go and live in a different country, away from all your friends, family, support network, and to be able to create a whole different life. So I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that I had from my experience, which then fulfills kind of a demand to want to do more and more of it, because it is such a great experience.
Yeah, it's a little bit of addictive, maybe, well. Yeah,
it is. It's like good. Traveling.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say there are any tools, or maybe even digital technologies, that either you have seen implemented for assignees, or you used yourself while you were an assignee, that really work to keep you connected or help with communication, whether that's with your employer, obviously back in your home country, or obviously with your colleagues as well, I suppose, because you don't just, step away from them entirely either.
Indeed. And I think some of it is just the very simple thing about maintaining the connections, having the discussions. Things like home leave are also really helpful as well. So that's a nice practice as well, to give the opportunity for people to go back to their home country and spend time reconnecting as well, which is very helpful. And even just simple business trips. So being able to get the benefit of going back to your home whilst working on other projects, etc. So I think those would be the really cool ones.
Yeah, and we've seen from the research that HR teams are doing really well in those areas, particularly in terms of the benefits and the time away from from work that they're given to travel home and see family, but also the means of connection that they have and the time that they're allocated to do that. So yeah, it's a really strong part of the research that we've seen actually, is how well connected people feel if, for example, their families are home and they've travelled on their own. Or yeah, so that's good. I was pleased that was your experience too. So is there any practical advice you would give to assignees to sort of make sure that they're getting this sort of support from their employer while they're away? Like, is there any sort of conversations that they can have before they leave, or things they can put in place before they go?
Indeed, I think the key thing are to make sure that you know all of the support that is available to you from your company, but also just to ask for the simple things as well. So I think asking the questions about, who are other expats that have been to that country before, so you can create some connections, understand experience that other people may have had, and really kind of using the networks that you've got, I think is the best advice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, something we saw is that buddying, mentoring is a really important part of integrating people into the workplace. But like you said, it could be that from those people that you learn, where to get the best pizza from, or where it's great to go for a walk down the park, or it's that sort of anecdotal conversations that help you feel settled as well, isn't it? So having someone in the workplace that you're going to that you can then connect with instantly, I think is really important. Did you use many sort of expat forums or support groups at all before you left or while you were there, or did you feel that most of those needs were met by maybe your colleagues or other networks that you joined?
Yeah, I didn't when I was in the US, because I felt that I was very well connected in any way. So I had great connections with my colleagues there who'd introduced me to lots of people, which was great. Chicago is a very friendly city. Yes. So I was hanging out with my neighbours, managed to create friends outside of work. So I didn't have a need for it in the US. In France, I found it a bit more tricky because obviously there's a language dimension, and I wasn't fluent in French when I went there, which did hamper my ability to connect with locals and feel very settled. But there, luckily with AXA, we had quite a group working within AXA who were all coming from different countries. So I used to hang out a lot with other expat friends from AXA, which was very nice. But I have heard lots of experience from other people that do use expat groups. So again, I think those can be a great way to connect with people who are having a similar life experience and would have experienced some of the same challenges that you can help navigate together, which is always good.
Yeah, definitely. And even just if you've got a hobby that you enjoy at home, taking that abroad with you and joining groups there, it can be a really simple way, I suppose, can't it, of feeling like you're connected. Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, great. So we're going to move a little bit more onto AXA now then. So obviously you've spoken about all the brilliant support you had with them while you went on your placements, which is great to hear. How do we support globally mobile employees? So what would you say are the important things for employees to get right to support sort of high performing talent? How does AXA do that?
So I think the first thing is selecting the right people to go on mobility. So again, obviously, it is really important that you're picking the people that have got the right mindset, appetite, motivation to be able to manage an international move. Then, as we talked about, having the right support and benefit package, the right expertise from an international mobility team to help support the individual. And then the other key element, I think, really is that level of support from managers and HR teams on an ongoing basis throughout the assignment.
And do you know, how can HR professionals, HR teams kind of influence organisational policy so that they're more reflective of global placements, even when maybe it's only a small part of their population? How would you advise that they do that?
Yeah, well, I think if you're going to have globally mobile employees, you do need very specific policies and support for them, because the needs that they will have are very unique and specific to their situation. So I think that's really important to have the right level of expertise as well. So obviously mobility can be complex when you're dealing with things like different tax regimes, immigration, compliance. So making sure that you've got the right experts to develop the policies. And then I think being really clear about, based on the type of mobile employees, what they will need in terms of support. So as we talked about, people who are away for a few months will have very different needs to people who are away for years. People who are at an earlier stage in their career are likely to have different needs and motivations compared to people who are more mature and experienced in their career. So I think it's about being really focused on what each group of employees is going to need in terms of support.
Yes, definitely. And I suppose if we think about those trends that are emerging that we're seeing from the research in terms of shorter assignments are increasing, I think, by 59% in the next 5 years, and digital nomadism is expected to increase too, then maybe even having sort of global mobility policies which are even tailored to those short-term assignments might become even more necessary in the future. So I suppose that's a wait and see, but yeah, if the predictions are correct, it could become even more important. We'll wrap up. Thank you. It's been such a great conversation. Thank you for sharing so much of your experience with us.
Thanks as well, Lydia, for sharing the research, because for me it's always super interesting to see what's going on in the external world and learn a little from that as well. So thank you.
Thanks for watching the first Healthcast in our World of Work series. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.